I'm Sarah Knight, and welcome to It's Got Pockets, where just like finding the surprise pockets in your favourite trousers, I'm bringing you perfect pockets of joy and realness. Every week, I'm having unfiltered conversations with women who crack the feck on, even when life gets proper lifey. Women with experience, expertise and wisdom. Because sometimes the best stories start in the middle. Women who've been there, done that, and they're still figuring it out. Join me for real talk, useful tactics, and all the swears in between that make your life and business feel that bit more manageable. Hello, welcome to It's Got Pockets. It's me, Sarah Knight, in case you haven't gathered. And today I have what can be only described as a joyful guest who's written about grief and losing the most special person in her life. But I already know through talking to her that it's about joy, actually, and it's about life, and it's about living life. And her book moved me to tears. But it's not just her book. Alison Larkin is the best-selling author of a book called The English American, a book called Grief, a Comedy, which I've got lots of questions about, Alison, a comedian, an actress, a producer, and the award-winning narrator of 250 audiobooks, including the complete novels of Jane Austen, including, which we need to come on to in a minute, there's so many questions I have for you, the fact that you've also taken other novels and switched genders in the novels. Anyway, before we start asking you questions, Alison Larkin, welcome to It's Got Pockets. I'm so bloody happy to have you here.
Oh, I'm very, very excited to be here. I'm very excited. It's great.
So, before we start, Alison, you are the queen of all accents. So you narrate. Tell us about Alison Larkin Presents first.
Okay. Well, when I started narrating audiobooks, I'd been a comedian and I'd been an actress for many years, and I spent a lot of time in Hollywood. I was going to star in my own show, and then I had kids, and I thought I cannot raise kids in Los Angeles. I refused to do it because, as we know, the LA philosophy is, I may not be much, but I'm all I ever think about. So I moved to the East Coast with my then husband, now my husband. And then when I found out that he had lost all our money, not because he was a bad man, but because he didn't know how to do maths, which it turns out is actually quite important if you're running your own business, I find myself in the middle of nowhere. I mean, I live in the Berkshires in Massachusetts, which is the home of the Norman Rockwell Museum. It's Alice's Restaurant. It's voluntary rural exile. And I suddenly thought, oh, I'd written a novel and it had done really, really well. And I thought, oh, we're fine. Financially, we're completely fine. And then he literally lost everything. So there I am with a 7-year-old and a 9-year-old living in a farmhouse in rural Massachusetts. And I get this call, and it's Audible. And they say, "Are you Alison Larkin, the writer comedian?" And I say, "Yes, used to be." And they go, "Well, if you will promise us 15 audiobook narrations a year, we will set you up with a home recording studio so you can earn a living as a single mom in the middle of the countryside where there's no other work except for writing, which you don't seem to be doing much of." And it was a godsend because I was in the middle of nowhere. I started narrating audiobooks in my clothes closet because it was the quietest. It was the quietest area to record because my clothes acted as a sound pad. And I've always been able to do accents and voices. And I found that with writing, when I'm writing, I can't think about anything else. But with an audiobook, I could shut the door on my studio at 3:00 every day and then be there for my kids until they went to bed, and then I'd be back in the studio. And then so Alison Larkin Presents happened when I was being hired by like Macmillan and Random House and Recorded Books and all these big names. And suddenly I thought to myself, somebody said, "Look, Alison, these big publishers are using your name to sell audiobooks. Why don't you use your name to sell audiobooks?" And the English part of me went, "Oh, no, I couldn't possibly." And then the American part of me thought, hey, why not? So I set up a company called Alison Larkin Presents. And I started with Pride and Prejudice because I knew it so well and I knew I could do it. And it did really, really well. And then I did Emma, and then I did the rest of them. And then I started taking the classics like Jane Eyre and looking at it and going, why is this relevant to women now? And then I get a sentence like, I am no bird, and no net ensnares me. I am a free woman of independent will, and I use that will to leave you now. That's Jane Eyre. And it's every woman now. So I've been taking the classics, and we've got a whole bunch of them coming out called Easy Classics, and I'm making them accessible, and I'm talking with young women and women of our age and older about why they relate to it. And yeah, so now you asked me one question about audiobooks. I'm so excited about it. But yeah, so that's Alison Larkin Presents. And yeah, you can check out everything on the website, the Alison Larkin Presents website.
I mean, the thing I love about that is making it relevant to women today. So one of my bugbears is the UK education system, which we won't go there because we're going to end up talking about it for too many hours. But how we actually bring some of these brilliant narratives to life and to make it relevant. And one of the things, and I can't remember, you'll have to excuse me because there's so many other things I want to talk to you about, but I can't remember which is the one where you turned the main character.
All right. So let me tell you what happened. So my kid comes home at the time, I think he was like 15. And he goes, Mom, why do people care if a girl wants to sleep with a girl or a boy wants to become a girl? I mean, why does it matter? And I said, because, darling, we live in a patriarchal society, and we have been trained for centuries to think in a certain way. And I suddenly thought, wait a second. What if I was to take one of the most famous characters in literature, Pip in Great Expectations by Charles Dickens, and change nothing but the gender of the leading character? What would happen? It would suddenly become normal for a woman to go into a bar without getting molested, for a girl to learn to read. They weren't educated in those days. For a woman to fall in love with a woman. So I did it as an experiment, and I narrated it, and I got swept away by the story, and it didn't matter. And I'm thinking, it's all in the mind. It's because the men have been in charge for far too long, and that's the result. But I do believe that's changing, but that's another subject.
It's changing, but it's changing slowly. And my belief is it's only changing by the conversations that we have like this, because it's about making things accessible across the barriers, across the, I've got a boy and a girl like you, and it's making sure that I have the right conversations with the boy as much as the conversation with the girl. And one of the things that I realised is that I was bringing my daughter up to be fierce, to walk with her keys between her fingers just in case, to actually, battle the system. And I've been bringing my boy up to be more gentle. And then I've had to have a word with myself and say, hang on a second, this is interlinked, it's actually, and don't get me wrong, they still absolutely bait each other. The daughter works in women's football, the son used to be in competitive football and is now, and there's the baiting that goes on in my house for the 19 and 23-year-old is ridiculous. But those conversations that we need to be having need to go upwards, downwards, sideways, and actually then throw in the brilliant stuff that you're doing is, what if Pip was a woman? What happens then? What happens then in schools if you have that fucking conversation instead of, oh, this is the language that we use? It's like...
Yeah, absolutely. And then actually I did the same with Scrooge. I did it with A Christmas Carol and that was fascinating because suddenly you had this very competent businesswoman and it just was fascinating. And you basically got to the bottom of it. Wait a second, human beings are basically the same and we have created these divisions. I mean, obviously there are differences, but I know what you mean. When I say I think it's changing, I think we've gone backwards recently. But I think we're going way forwards, and we'll see. I mean, I am an eternal optimist, so let's work on.
Well, and I also think that the generation coming through aren't standing for the shit that our generation stood for. And I think that's wonderful. And I think it's throwing all manner of chaos into the corporate world. But I, for one, bloody love it. However, let's talk about your internal optimism, because that's the thing that struck me when I read your book, Grief, a Comedy. The first thing, and it's really interesting because recently on the podcast, I've had lots of guests that have talked about grief and what happens if and what could be. And frankly, they're conversations that, again, have to happen and we shy away from them, especially if you're very English. Also, I need to get you to do lots of accents, but we'll save that for a minute. And what I loved about this book, I was reading it and I got it sent to me and I was having a read of it. And it opens with the prologue about how you lost your husband. And it doesn't just open with the prologue about how you lost your husband. It opens with, I met Archbishop Desmond Tutu in 2005. And when I read it, I'm not going to lie, Alison, I thought, well, here's a fictional story, still inhaling it, still ready to inhaling it. And I'm thinking, okay. And then I get to the bit where you're thinking, what on earth am I doing here? And then you start talking about him as the Arch. Then I see the emails that you've sent to each other. And then I hear the words that he said to you. I can't control what happens to me, but I can control how I respond to it, which is one of the mantras I have, to the point that actually my 19-year-old son actually said that back to me the other day, which really pissed me off because I was just having a rant about something I couldn't control. And I was like, okay, my job here is done, but seriously, shut up. The book is beautiful, but what struck me about it is it's not so much about death as about life.
Yeah.
Talk to me about that, because that must have been difficult to write. It's a spiritual book as well. That's the feeling I've got from it.
That's interesting. I mean, I just actually read a description. It won something. I can't remember what. And they described it as a midlife rom-com that dives into the relationships that continue with people we've loved very much after they've died as well. And I think, it's really interesting. Your questions are your question is really, how could I write something like that from something that happened that was so devastating? And I think it's really interesting. And I think the answer is that something your listeners don't know yet, but they're about to find out, is I was adopted and I was brought up by very English parents. And then I found my birth mother in Tennessee when I was in my mid-20s. And it was a very complicated, challenging experience. It turned me into stand-up comic. So I would go down to the comedy clubs in New York, having just met my birth parents, and I'd say things like, I think everyone should be adopted because that way you can meet your birth parents when you're old enough to cope with them. And I'd say, as far as love is concerned, the key to dealing with the fear of abandonment is to date people you don't like. So if they do leave you, it doesn't matter. And I turned what was actually quite a complicated and painful experience into comedy. And that was very liberating because I don't know who said it. Somebody said, if you want to tell people the truth, make them laugh first or they'll kill you. And I think I knew how to take how to process an impossible experience through comedies. And Archbishop Desmond Tutu had seen my show and he'd read The English American, which sprang from the show, which was a very autobiographical novel about an adopted Englishwoman who finds her birth mother and love in the United States. But it was very much a novel. And so what happened was I had spent a lifetime avoiding love. I married a man I liked, but did not love because I thought, well, he's much older than me and he definitely won't go off with a younger woman because I am a younger woman. So I figured maximum security. I can concentrate on my comedy career and on writing. And I did until I found out that he had lost everything. Never make the mistake of thinking that just because a man knows how to do the laundry, it also means he knows how to handle the family.
Sorry, hang on a second. You met a man who knew how to do the laundry?
That was why I married him.
Oh, well, yeah. I mean, to be fair, I think there'd be women all over the world marrying that man just because he knew how to do the laundry. Just to put it in perspective, I asked the husband to bring the washing in at the weekend off the clothesline, and he did. He followed the instructions. He left all the pegs on the fucking clothesline. I'm like,
Well, there you go. Well, this is exactly why. Not only could he do the laundry, he could clean the kitchen. And he kept me organized, and I am not organized, and I needed him, and I had been through this traumatic experience, and we didn't sleep together. He wasn't interested in sex. He liked to sleep in a separate room, and I did miss it, and it was a 20-year marriage.
wow.
But after I left him, when I found out that he'd lost everything, and I also didn't think I could bear a loveless marriage any longer. So in a way, I was quite grateful that he lost all my money, because I'm a loyal type. And if he hadn't, I'd have still be married to him and very, very unhappy. But anyway, so I moved with the kids, as I told you earlier, to this rural part of Massachusetts, started the audiobook career. Then the kids are in college. And I had this moment, and you can see, are we doing this? Are we going to be videoed? Is this video being showed? It's up to you. But I'm in a recording studio right now, which is where I record my audiobooks. So it's a bit like a hearse, actually. It's a bit like a coffin, if you look at it.
It is.
These are padded walls, dark grey padded walls, and you're on your own. And yes, I'm narrating great romances. Elizabeth has Darcy. Jane Eyre has Rochester, but what about me? And my kids are in college, and I'm pretty lonely, so I head down to the coffee shop, and there's this older couple there. And you can tell they're really, really happy together. And then about 6 months later, I find out that he has died. And I somehow pluck up the courage to say to the woman, I've avoided love my entire life because I didn't want to suffer the way you are now. Was it really worth it? And she said, oh, yes. Was your choice to avoid love really worth it? And I said, I don't know. So then a friend of mine suggests I online date. So there I am in my early 50s. I'm like, okay, I'll try it. And I met a college professor who talked about himself for 3 hours straight and then told me what a great conversationalist I am. And then I meet I really actually truly word for word met a man who said, I'm a catch. I own a multi-million-dollar company. And I said, I'm terribly sorry, but have you been drinking? And he said, no, I'm from Connecticut. And I just sort of thought, I can't do this. I actually did date a man with a beard who really did have scrambled egg in it. Really, truly. And I just gave up. And then one day I'm walking into this hotel where you can get the New York Times on a Sunday. And I found out the last paper was taken, and the woman behind receptionist points to this man. And I look over, and there's this man, and he's about my height, and he's a bit thinner, and he's smiling at me, and he's holding up the Sunday Times magazine, which has the crossword in it. And then he's coming towards me, and he says, I'm sorry I took the last paper. And then he's handing me his New York Times. And I say to him, oh, no, I only get it because I like to do Sunday's crossword because it's so much easier than Saturdays. It is. Fridays is hard too. Yes. They get more difficult as the week goes on. They do. And we fell in love. And he was from Hyderabad in South India. And like me, I'd come to America 30 years earlier to find my birth mother. And he'd come 30 years earlier to do a PhD in chemical engineering. And we felt, it was like wearing a shoe that's too tight for your entire life and then finally taking it off.
That was the line in your book that I've highlighted, as I've showed you that I've highlighted various things, as you put, here we both are in our 50s, fully in love for the first time in our lives with someone who gets us, It's making me emotional even saying it. At long last, I'm not only in love, I'm also at peace.
Yeah, that's it. And I did not know until then that you could have both.
No.
So we met each other's families, and the first thing my dad said to Beamer, his name was Beamer, when he met him, he put his arm around his shoulder and he said, "I'm terribly sorry about what we did to India." And Beamer, who had this brilliant sense of humour, just fell in love with my father and my mother, and we just got on, and I loved his family. And then we started planning a life together, and neither of us had led a traditional life. I mean, he had a solar company. He was into renewable energy. He was a climate scientist. And I had this audiobook company. I was a writer and a creative. I actually thought we might do a podcast together at one point. And we were planning a life in America, India, England, all over the world, doing things that mattered. We felt that was important, both of us, to try and help make things a bit better. And then one day, after a perfect day, playing rummy and looking up at the stars, he wasn't feeling well. And it was COVID. It was 2020. And it was the last day in July 2020, so coming up for 5 years ago. And the doctor said he needed to go down to the hospital to have a COVID test, and we went down. Now, he'd had a triple bypass 4 years before I met him. And so when I got to the hospital, I said, let me go in with him because he's had a triple bypass, and they wouldn't because it was COVID. And then half an hour later, I'm waiting outside by the car when a security guard... Oh, by the way, the other thing to mention is 5 days earlier, we had decided to marry. He asked me to marry him, and he said, let's do this. And we were very excited about it. So it was 5 days after that. So he's in having his COVID test. I'm outside. A security guard comes over and says they left him alone in a room. And when they came back, they found him on the floor in cardiac arrest. And that this brilliant, beautiful 54-year-old man has just been pronounced dead. And so it's COVID. We have a funeral by Zoom, which actually was funnier than you can imagine, but that's all in the book. And then this extraordinary thing happened. I went numb, and but when the numbness thawed, I was waiting for the despair. I'd avoided love my whole life because I didn't want, this is the worst thing that could happen. What would I want to do? Spend the life under the bed? No doubt. But instead, when the despair lifted, I found this extraordinary surprise. And I felt this sense of joy, and I was acutely alive. And I thought, why? And then I thought, well, when people die, the body goes, but the love doesn't go anywhere. And I thought, I've got a choice now, because now I know how quickly life can go. I can give up, or I can live life more fully than ever before, which means, in my case, even despite I am a bit of a loner, and I thought I've got to connect with people. I've got to go out into community. I'm going to get in the best physical shape of my life, and I did.
Yeah.
I'm so hiking up mountains, eating. I refused to eat sugar. I thought, if I have sugar, I'm going to crash emotionally. So I thought, hang on a second. I have no choice as to whether my beloved Beamer dies, but I have a choice about what I can put in my body, about who I hang out with. I'm not going to hang out with anybody who drains me or is exhausting. I am going to be surrounded by nature. I'm going to do work I really, really love. I suddenly saw it all as a garden, which is probably a really hackneyed metaphor, but for some reason I thought, wait a second, it's like weeding the garden. I'm going to take out all the weeds, and I'm just going to have flowers, because it can go just like that. It went just like that. And I had this extraordinary connection with him. So then, Archbishop Desmond Tutu had told me, he knew what had happened. He said, you've got to go back on stage and you've got to write another book. And you can't really say no to Archbishop Desmond Tutu. So I read a one-woman show that went to the Edinburgh Fringe and then to the Soho Theatre in London, and it did really well. It was in the UK. That was 2024. And then I wrote this book, which is called Grief, a Comedy. And really, it's a love story. And it starts 6 weeks after Beamer died, when he shows up at my kitchen table, determined to help me find love again. It's imaginary, of course. Or is it?
Is it?
And that's sort of where we're at. And the book came out June the 3rd, and it's out on audio as well. And I mean, I don't know anything about past life experiences. I've never read a book on spiritualism. I don't even know what a medium is, except it's a medium age in the middle of a life. I mean, that is not my thing, right? But I felt this connection with him, and I wrote about it. So it's a love story that starts before he dies and continues afterwards. And then he accompanies me, as you know, because you have read the book, on online dates, and has a lot to say about that and about my tendency to push people away, and how perhaps maybe this time I don't want to be with somebody who's 80, and that kind of a thing. So it's and at the end, I mean, I mean, it's not giving anything away to say, look, it could be true. It could be wishful thinking. It could be something in between. But if we are spiritual beings having a human experience, if people we love who have died really are full of love and surrounded by light in a radiant world right next to this one, then doesn't that change everything? And I mean, and this is where it kind of links with what your podcast is about, creating a life you love, right? In midlife, it's saying, I am going to choose how I live. And so I think ultimately each day you get to choose how you'll spend it. And my lesson from this has been, obviously don't waste a minute, because tonight might end the whole thing. But so I've chosen this joy, and it hasn't gone anywhere. It's still here 5 years later. And I'm extremely excited by hearing from readers. Like, I'm hearing from people, and it's exactly what you're talking about earlier as well. People don't talk about these things. But one woman, and I put this in the book, she comes to the show, and she's from your part of the world, so I'm going to try and do, I don't know.
Go on, do it.
I said to her, look, this is a bunch of women. We're all in the bar. We're all having quite a few drinks. And I said to them, and a lot of them had heard me on Women's Hour, and they said, oh, we're going to come from Manchester and Sheffield and Bristol, and we're going to come see your show. And I said, well, we'll have a drink afterwards in the Soho bar on Dean Street. So we're there with our beers and our whatever else. And I finally said to them, look, girls, did you have a relationship that continued with your loved one after he died, or if it was a man after she died? And this woman bursts into tears and says, thank you for asking the question. And another woman says, well, all right, I haven't told anybody, but I set the table for Wilf every single night. We have dinner together and we have a right old chat, and he's been dead for 4 years. And we're all suddenly talking about this thing that nobody mentions, because people will think you're nuts or bonkers or whatever if you say, well, actually, I have a real sense of this person. But we all do. We
do.
And then you go, whoa. Then what's death? And then I get to this place where, Beamer was really into renewable energy. Is it renewable energy? And just because we can't necessarily understand it intellectually, we can understand it with our heart and with our soul and our being. And I find that I'm just so excited. Like, yours is the first podcast I've done, so I get to talk to somebody about this. But I just love the idea of talking and hearing from people about their experiences, because this is one of the taboo subjects, isn't it?
It is, and it's one of the things that my one of my very close friends went to sit on her cloud during COVID, at the end of COVID actually, and virtually the day after she died, I've got a lovely back garden, and this robin came down. So very quickly, the robin became known as Fiona, and I used to talk to Fiona the robin every single day. And it's really interesting because then her wonderful husband, Mark, I hope Mark's all right with me sharing this, but Mark has gone on and amazingly, he walked the Wainwrights in the Lake District as part of his journey through grief. That's what he did. That's how he walked through into something else. And he met an amazing woman, and they're together and they're dead happy. Anyway, me and the husband, I always call him the current husband, but I'm not doing it again. The current husband, were in the Lake District, and we were going off to meet my friend and his new missus. And as we left the hotel, we walked off and we walked to the car park. And as we walked to the car park, James went, "Look over there." And I looked, and obviously Fiona the robin was sat on the gatepost. And James is not into all that sort of stuff, and I'm not really. I'm this more cynical than cynical Cyril, and I sat there and I just went, well, that's either Fiona coming down to give us her blessing and say it's all right, you can be friends with the new coupling, or she's coming down to say I curse you. She wouldn't. She absolutely wanted Mark to find love, find life, and live life. And I think one of the lines in your book that, again, absolutely resonated with me is when Beamer's talking to you, and he says, and what I love about it is how I'm telling you about your book now. Shall I tell you about the book that you've written and you've lived and breathed? Let me share with you what you wrote, Alison, in case you can't remember. And but what I loved about it was he continued to teach you lessons after he died, and those lessons, however you view them when you read the book, as like you say, it's that joy to take hold of. And one of the things that he said is, Alison, wanting to die doesn't mean you don't want to live anymore. It just means you want to live differently. And things like that, and then you write about the extra energy I felt soon after Beamer died fills me with pure joy, and I don't understand it. And I love that duality of emotions with grief, because I'm not underestimating for a minute it broke you. I'm not underestimating for a minute you probably sobbed and rocked in a corner and got under a table. But actually, I don't think we accept enough the duality of emotions that comes with life or death.
Right. Well, if you think about it, it's the same muscles, isn't it? Crying
Yep.
and laughing. You laugh helplessly and you cry helplessly. It's the same muscles.
Yeah.
And I think that's true. And I don't think it's possible to experience the kind of joy that I continue to experience without incredible pain. And the only thing that I think I said in the book that's remotely like this in my experience is what happens during childbirth, which is the most excruciatingly painful thing in the world. But without the pain, you wouldn't have the kids. And
Yeah.
and that's where I mean, the point is, I've just got to this stage of life where I'm finally going, oh, there's going to be pain, and there's going to be pain for the rest of life. You're going to have good days, bad days, good years, bad years. And in the end, I think where you get to is you go, okay, all right, this too shall pass. This will pass. This pain, this period is going to go. And you don't know it when you're young. When you're young, you think it's never going to go anywhere. But when you're older, you've been through so much that you just know. But where I do think you can do it, and I was talking to somebody about this yesterday, who was having a really tough time. And I said, but here's the thing. It's really, really shitty what you're going through. There's no denying that. While you're going through it, maybe there's some things you could do. Do you want to go swimming in a lake right now? And I dragged this friend of mine and we went swimming in a lake while she's in the midst of something really, really awful. But I'm thinking, we do have a choice in what we focus on. It doesn't mean we're in denial. We've got to go through it. We can't, it's there. But I think we can also choose to look, and like if I was only reading the news right now, I'd be suicidal.
Oh,
But
yeah.
I'm not, because I do it. I read it a bit, but I also read incredible, beautiful literature. But I also I look at the sky. I look at nature. I play with a puppy. I make sure that I spend time with people, little people, young people, that there's so much good in the world, and we're not focusing on it right now. And again, I suspect this is patriarchal, but again, we don't have to blame the men for everything. But it does seem to me that most news outlets are run by men. But there's amazing, miraculous things happening every day that we don't hear about, and we as women can choose to say, okay, yeah, and look up that too. And I think that's where we have a bit of a choice.
And that is something that, again, we have to realize that that's on us, isn't it? It's that actually taking the decision that you have a choice rather than being consumed by what's going on. Or you have a choice to get up in the morning. You have a choice to walk outside, look up at the sky. And I had another friend that corked it selfishly as well. And she used to say, look up, because if you look up, you've got a world of possibility. And we have a choice to do that, or we have a choice to just look down and see what's here. But it's on us to make the choice, isn't it? And not allow someone else to make the choice for us.
That's it. And I also think what you just said about that amazing story about the robin, you know, I mean, we know, when we're really going through it, whatever it is, there's people, if we're people we really have loved deeply have died. I mean, like my dad died in 2022. I've got a best friend that died about 10 years ago. Yeah, I know what they'd say. So I'll say, hey, look what's going on here. I don't know what to do. And if you shut the fuck up, at least I have to. I'm sure you're very good. I mean, I have to shut myself up and say, stop talking, just listen. You know, because you knew them and you loved them and you know what they would say. And I mean, I don't know if people who've died are going to communicate with us. How are they going to do it unless it's through our imagination?
Does it matter? As long as you're finding some, as long as you're finding a way through and a way to still find some joy, does it matter?
And the thing that for me that's so ironic is it's more.
Yeah.
I'm more joyful. I'm more alive now than I've ever been. And so it's like, it's not even in spite of what happened, it's because of what happened. And I still don't totally get it, but hey, I'm not complaining.
No, but also that's testament to you and how you've approached it.
Well, maybe with a bit of thanks and help from Desmond Tutu and that quote that you mentioned that's worth repeating. I can't control what happens to me, but I can control how I respond to it. And that is true. And when we remember that, I mean, I had this amazing, I had an email yesterday. There's a woman who read the book and her husband had died and she was really depressed, as you would be. And she said, look, I had an advance copy when the show was out, and she'd read it about a year ago. She said, look, it gave me permission to love again. And she said, I hadn't given myself permission. She got out of her own way. It was nothing to do with me, but it was just like she was in her own way. We get in our own ways.
All the time. All the time. The biggest barrier we have to anything is ourselves.
Yeah. That's it.
And then if we allow ourselves the permission to do differently, look differently, have different conversations, like you said about listen to actually what's going on, it opens up so many different ways to create lives that we want, that we choose in, rather than just getting carried away with the day-to-day, which is part and parcel of life. I do think that contentment bit, you talk about when I can't remember what your puppy's name's called, Charlie, when you got your dog and everything. And actually that to me is part of the contentment of life, is just the routine of taking Charlie for a walk or having Charlie around you, or that allows you to then enjoy this moment and then move on to the next moment.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's like, we're on this treadmill, especially in America. I mean, it's probably still true in England. I don't know, but I've been here for so long, I don't know the difference. But here, the culture is keep pushing, keep pushing, keep pushing, keep pushing. Why?
Yeah.
I mean, you've got to pay the bills, that's for sure. But if you're lucky enough to have the basics covered, even if you're trying to cover the basics, stop. And I'm learning that now. I wish I'd known it many, many years ago. And I wish I had known it many years ago that I wish I had dared to love many years ago. I wish that, because what a waste. What a waste of avoiding love, because I was afraid of the worst happening, and then the worst happens, and not only am I okay, I'm really alive now. But maybe part of my job is to go through that and pass on,
Yeah,
But
maybe
I
that's
think
part.
there's
That's
the
the
message.
message.
And I'm assuming we've got lots of women listening, and the other thing I'd say is don't settle. Like, if you're not happy, it's your life. It could be gone tomorrow. Right.
Yeah. Don't settle. When you talk about love, one of the things that again had me absolutely tearing up yesterday. I was finishing it off in the garden where I had one of those weekends where I was like, no one talked to me. I'm pissed off with the world. I'm a bit hormonal / a lot hormonal. Everyone's getting on my tits. So basically, you were my companion in the garden yesterday, and we got to the end of it. And towards the end, you talk about your children more and more, and they're grown up, kidults, I call them, because they never stop being your kids, do they? But and I'm going to try and say this without crying, because this really got to me. And you were talking about how Tom came over to you after Beamer died, and you were crying and you started letting the emotion out. And you write, suddenly I can't hold it in. And the boy I held in my arms for the first few years of his life is holding me in his. Up until this point in my life, I'd hidden my vulnerability from my kids with some success. Fuck me. I mean, I know you shouldn't talk about your children and then immediately follow it with a profanity, but here we are. But equally, that for me, because I've got a 19-year-old and I've been in spaces where showing them my vulnerability has been a really big part of it. But then all of a sudden, your kids are looking after you a bit, and it's a real step change. And when you talk then about love, and you talked about, you hadn't opened yourself up to love, my first thought then was, well, you have, because of what your kids gifted you back right there.
You're absolutely right. And that's where I sort of think I am now. I think I've opened myself up to community, to friends, to my kids in a big way. And I think what you just said about showing your children your vulnerability gives them permission to show theirs. And if we're raising children in a world where we need to find our common humanity, there's so much to do. We must find our common humanity. Then we start with ourselves and our families, and we say, I'm breaking up here. And we love each other. And then perhaps that's how we make the changes. We love each other. But yeah.
It's just so. Now then, I need to ask you about your 6-word memoir, because no one leaves this podcast without telling me a 6-word memoir. I'd also basically like to talk to you for another 3 hours. So I think we maybe need to just carry on the conversation. However, in one of the final chapters, you're talking about when you took the show on stage and your dad's just passed away, and your mum amazingly would do exactly the same thing that my mum would have done, would do, is crack on, go and do what you need to do and do it. And you talk about the final song and you say, I know I'm not just singing about me, I'm singing about all of us. Now, it wouldn't be me if I didn't say, come on, Alison, give us a tune, mate.
Oh, darling. Now, look, have I had my tea and honey? No, but I'll try. So, I can walk, I can breathe, I can speak and see and hear, and I can bend my knees. I've got 2 legs. I find things funny. And if I keep my living simple, I've got enough money. I can read any book. I can eat feta cheese. There are people I love who are living. I can spend time with these. It's not the life I thought I'd live, but I'm good at changing plans. I've got a lot to be thankful for and a likely long lifespan. And when I'm missing my true love, if I get very still and close my eyes and take a breath, I can bring him near at will. I can walk, I can breathe, I can shut out all distractions and take the time to grieve. And if grieving is the price we pay for the deep love that we feel, then grief is just part of the deal. Yes, grief is just part of the deal.
I can't speak. Honestly, that's ridiculous. You've made me snot bubble.
Can I write that down?
You have. You've made me snot bubble. Doesn't look good. Put mascara on and everything, for God's sake, woman. Right. I'm goosey and I'm hot and I'm sweaty now and I'm all emotional. Alison, I bloody love you. Will you be my best friend forever?
Oh, yes, I will, please.
Excellent. That's brilliant. Before I ask you 6-word memoir, what's your favourite accent?
Oh, I don't know, honey. Probably from the South. I don't know. I mean, there's a lot I really, really like. I mean, there's a lot of Scottish accents I like, actually. I got to do quite a few of them when I was up in Scotland and Edinburgh last year, because I can't help it. I have a tendency to do the accent of the person I'm talking to. But then, of course, there's a sort of, I did a lot of cartoons when I was in Los Angeles. I was Pauline in Pauline's Perilous Pyramid. And I also played several roles in Grand Theft Auto 5. And I got killed a lot, which my son really enjoys because he's played the game a lot and he loves to kill me whenever he does. But yeah, favourite accent, I don't know. I love them all, I think.
I love it. There's a game. I don't know. Oh, what's it called? I need to remember the game, but it's called something like, it's the worst game in the world. It's called something like Shit on the Pavement, right? And it's an English game. And the idea is that you have a few drinks, and as you go round the room, you all have to do a different accent. So, and the person that does the accent first, so says, right, okay, let's do a Welsh accent. And then you go round the room and everyone has to do a Welsh accent. And then you all vote on who's got the shittest accent. But you have to say exactly the same phrase, shit on the pavement. And then you keep going around, and obviously you drink quite a lot. So if you're sober, it's not the game for you. However, never play that game.
No. That is funny.
Yes.
I promise you. I won't.
So, as all my guests come onto the podcast, one of the things that I ask them to do is to give me their 6-word memoir, which can be a memoir, an affirmation, a mantra, something they carry with them every day. And it's based on Ernest Hemingway's shortest story ever told. Alison, what's your 6-word memoir?
I only saw that request this morning, but then I just thought I've got it and I just wrote it down. Choose love and laughter after loss.
Oh, stop it again.
Is that all right?
Yeah. Jesus, woman. Right. Bit emotional. If anyone's not crying, listens to this, then get in touch because you're harder than the hardest person in Hardland. And it's not a good place to be. We need to soften you up between us. Anyway, thank you. It's been such a pleasure.
It's working. I just can't tell you. Talking to you has been such a pleasure. I think we're kindred spirits, Sarah Knight.
I think we are, Alison Larkin. Although I'm not sure I'll ever be a stand-up comic. Final thing, I will put all the details in the show notes, but this book is It is. It's about joy. It's about life. It's about grief. It's about loss. It is a love story. And it's called Grief, a Comedy. And it's by the bloody marvellous and fabulous Alison Larkin, who I am incredibly grateful has come into my life. Thank you, Alison.
Thank you, Sarah, so much.
As we button up another episode of It's Got Pockets, remember that just like that perfect dress with hidden storage, you've got pockets of potential. You can be exactly who you are meant to be with no one getting in your way, not even yourself. Just remember, you're not done yet. That plan B or plan C might be waiting for you. If you've enjoyed this episode and would like to work with me, or simply want to connect, come and find me at sarahknightconsultancy.co.uk or on LinkedIn, you'll find me as Nighty S. See you next time.